This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. I don't know what's going on with my this setup here today. It's just doing its own thing. It's dragging its butt. You'll see at the intro, whoever watches this later, it's like it's sound like on a delay. I don't know. What can I say? You know, we're having bad weather out here in Florida. Who knows? You know, I've spoken about this before. Sometimes I call it paranormal sabotage, especially not because when I have a spicy guest, because when I said I was an exorcist or something, I was like, okay, somebody wants, but I don't think that's the case here. I just think it's like stuff acting up. That's the only explanation I can give. So everything is good. Besides that, everything is good here. Everything is good. You know what? Everybody was asking me, the last few shows I've talked about, the news as far as with the UFOs, but my other thing, futuristic stuff, is having to do with AI. Okay. And everybody's kind of a little bit, how can I say it? Wigged out? No, yeah. I know some people more than others are a little bit wigged out. Okay. But let me wig you out a little bit more. Okay, this is an article out of Interesting Engineering, and it's titled Video: China's Slim-Waisted Humanoid Robot Debuts with Lifelike Human Skills. Check it out. All right. It's called the Q5. Okay, and it uses LiDAR and stereo vision to autonomously navigate complex spaces with smooth movement and minimal human oversight, which means it can do whatever it wants. I'm only kidding. But it's a firm called Roboterra. They just unveiled it. Okay. And basically they're showcasing it dexterity, more mobility, and interactive intelligence, which, a lot of these videos that you see about robots, they're very like awkward and stumbly and very slow. So I guess they're going after that aspect. And again, human-like build. And it excels in environments requiring delicate manipulation, smooth navigation, and lifelike engagement. Also, it supports full-body teleoperation through gloves and VR systems. Okay. And apparently it can even use chopsticks. Now, and check this out, it does culinary tasks like cooking dumplings, steaming buns, and pouring wine. Remember, this is in China, so what that means is that pretty soon they'll be saying, do you want it delivered home? It'll cook for you. It aims to redefine human-robot interaction through its fusion of engineering precision and embodied artificial intelligence. Okay. It weighs about 124 pounds and 1,050 millimeters in height. I don't know exactly how that translates into inches. It responds quickly, up to 10 times per second, which means it could kill you very quickly. Just kidding. Not really, but. And let's see what else. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, let me get back to. So what do you guys think? Do you think that this is something to worry about or not? Because I know everybody is thinking Skynet. But, all right, this, or you know what? This reminds me more of, I take that back, of iRobot. Okay, where everybody has this handy dandy little robot running around in your house doing all the menial tasks that we hate to do, including this one. That, so what do you think? In less than, easily less than 10 years, 5 years maybe? And I don't know how deep your pockets have to be to get one of these. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What are the caveats on that? All right. And as a matter of fact, last week's show, I was talking with a gentleman by the name of James Russell, and he's a psychic medium. We got into the conversation. At what point do robotics slash AI become sentient and have a soul? Wow, huh? Think about that. 'Cause I'm telling you, the only reason why they make them so human-like versus, let's say you remember the Jetsons, for those of you who are old enough, the little robot that was the maid. She was purely robot. Yeah, she kind of like him, but not really. You could tell she was strictly robotics. This insistence of it looking more and more like a human is to humanize it for us because we're built that way. We're wired that way. So, at what point does it become sentient? Does it have a soul? Remember Blade Runner? How these robots have a definite time span and they come back to their creator because they don't want to die? Something to think about because really, even when you think about the paranormal and ghosts and everything, which is the human soul that supposedly is trapped, are we in the future, are we going to have to be doing paranormal investigations into robots that have died? I know it's a big rabbit hole, isn't it? Okay, but let me get on to the good part. The good part is, who is the guest today? These are investigators from Crash Paranormal. Their name is Craig Rackley. He's an educator, portrait artist, and paranormal investigator based in Birmingham, Alabama. His journey into the paranormal began in 2007 when he formed the research team Birmingham Paranormal. After several years of investigating together, the team merged with the Tuscaloosa Paranormal Research Group. It's a TAPS affiliated, and in his 18 years in the field, Craig has taken part in over 200 investigations across the United States. Ashley Kirkland is a professional photographer, actor, filmmaker, and paranormal investigator based in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. She's a third-generation ghost hunter. Ashley comes from a family with deep roots in the paranormal field. Growing up in a haunted house only fueled her lifelong curiosity about the supernatural. In 2019, she joined the Tuscaloosa Paranormal Research Group with a mission to learn more and help others navigate their own unexplained experiences. In 2023, they partnered to co-found Crash Media Paranormal, further expanding their work in the paranormal field. Help me welcome them. How are you doing today, guys? Oh, let me unmute you. That would help. How are you guys doing?
Hi, I'm doing
I know
good.
it's like comedy of errors.
Oh
So
yeah,
you both
you're good.
have backgrounds in paranormal,
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
Ashley, you have from a family, background. In other words, you grew up in a haunted house.
Mhm.
Was it really haunted? Now, how's this? Did you realize it was haunted when you were living there, or is it something that after you grew up, you look back and you go, "Wow, that was a haunting."
Yeah, it was, back in like the 80s and 90s, the ghost hunting on TV shows wasn't really a thing. And so
Right.
we knew it was haunted, but it was one of those things we didn't really talk about it. You
Okay.
don't want them to think you're crazy and everything. But now that
Yeah.
I'm older and, this is, the paranormal has become more of a open conversation with people and accepted. I look back on it and understand things so much better now. Like, I
Okay.
wish I could go back and investigate that house, but
Okay.
back then, it was just experiencing these things, and I think that's why I became an investigator now, so I can, learn more and understand the things that I did experience.
Okay. And how about you, Craig? Did you ever have a childhood experience? That's usually what.
Um, Usually in my great grandmother's house in Mobile, Alabama, or in Spanish Fort,
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, when we
Yeah.
would go visit there, it's like every time I would try to sleep, I would hear breathing coming
Oh
from the
boy.
and it's like I couldn't sleep, and it would scare the mess out of me. But when I was a kid, my mom had an old friend from high school come and spend the weekend with us, and she was a ghost hunter, and I had never even heard of a ghost hunter before.
Okay.
And so she came and told us a story about being up on a ladder and painting a wall, and something kept like pulling at her shirt. And so finally, she put the paintbrush down and looked at it and said, "I don't know who you are, but either you're going to help me paint this wall, or you're going to leave me alone." And said it left her alone the rest of the night. But for some reason, well, she stayed up all night, like telling the story. So that's when I was hooked. Then it was Stephen King novels.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yes.
I was reading Anne Rice when I was like 12. So
Yeah.
and then now I live in a haunted house.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. 100-year-old historic home in Bessemer, Alabama. It's called the Bristow House. It was built by the first pediatrician in Bessemer, Alabama. And the rumor is that it was taken over by the mafia, by the mob, the
Okay.
Chicago mob, which was actually very prevalent in Bessemer, Alabama, of all places.
Okay.
And the rumor is they got rid of the bodies in my basement in the weird.
Was this what, during Prohibition or afterwards?
I think during Prohibition, because
Yeah.
around that time. And there is a very weird bathtub in my basement, and I've had like several neighbors comment on that. Oh, that's where they used to get rid of the bodies. I'm like, well, that's good to know.
You know what? Hey, no body, no crime. That's the way.
Exactly.
Let's face it. Let's face it. A lot of these people weren't going to be missed anyway. But still, yeah. I believe it. They did a way that all that. And by the way, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of states or counties around the country went dry like years before Prohibition.
Right.
So they were already there was a network of bootlegging going on way before actual like Prohibition was enacted across the country.
Right.
And which of course comes along with a bunch of crime because everybody wanted in on that money.
Exactly. And Bugsy Siegel, the big famous mobster, married
Yeah.
Virginia Sims, where they got
Okay.
Virginia Slims cigarette
Really?
from. She was from Bessemer.
There you go. I did not know that.
So they may have been at my house. I have no idea, but one time they were shooting film in my basement. There's been like three, short films shot in my basement, and me and the
Okay.
makeup lady were just sitting there watching the film being shot. And
Uh-huh.
the only way I can describe it is a blue mass at the bottom of on the floor goes from one end to the other like a little piece of ball lightning. We both looked at each
Uh-huh.
other like, you saw that, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Let me tell you something. I don't know what it is about basements, cellars, caves, mines.
mine's creepy.
I don't know. There's always something. If you're gonna have it's like guaranteed. Either you have weird stuff in all the house, but the darker stuff is always there.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't know if it has to do with being inside the earth itself, but always the slant is a little bit darker or malevolent or creepy when it's something going into the ground. You hear about it all the time when people use their cellars or their basements for like recreational purposes, and they're like, yeah, it was people are like, I'm gonna sleep down there, forget it, I'm not. Or I have to think twice because I have to go downstairs to do the laundry, but not by myself.
Right.
That kind
Right.
of deal.
Exactly. And it could be also the deeper it is, the more constant the temperature is. That's
Yes.
something interesting about basements and cellars. Is
Yes.
It's almost like a constant temperature down there.
And you don't have any wells in there? Because I know a lot of.
Yeah, I think so, because when I bought the house, we were putting up a fence, and we put some concrete in a specific area, and we literally watered it almost overnight, and it never filled up. So there's a lot of mines under Bessemer, so it's a
Okay.
little scary to think, but there's been rumors of tunnels.
Oh yeah.
Bessemer, Alabama has a very long history.
Yeah.
And,
Interesting.
yeah.
And people, you know what? We don't think of it because I don't think it. Well, no, I take that back. As far as modern use, but I'm thinking about it and I get claustrophobic because when you look at some of these tunnels, but for some reason, especially when you're talking about bootlegging and illegal stuff, that tunnel thing was a popular thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So especially if somebody that didn't want to be seen, like as in a well-known person or a politician or somebody, I want to come and go or delivery of stuff. Yeah, but that was like, well, what's the word for it? Skullduggery. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called every exactly.
Yeah. So I bet you had a lot of that going on.
Oh yeah.
So why did you guys decide what is as far as the haunt you both work together in the same paranormal group?
Right.
Okay. And
Yes,
what?
we're part of a group called the Tuscaloosa Paranormal Research Group.
Right.
So we've been investigators with that, but we started Crash to kind of be able to create our own channel and share our investigations. And so we do some things on our own with Crash, and then we document all the investigations that we go on with Tuscaloosa Paranormal, and just to kind of show what we do and how we do
Right.
things.
Let me ask you, have you been to I'm sure you have, but let me ask, Mobile, Alabama, because I know that's a very old city as far as
Right.
historical stuff.
Right. That's where my family is from.
Okay.
That area, and we do have a couple of things that we're looking at in Mobile right now.
Yeah, and
Okay.
didn't we do one, or I think we did one near there
Mm-hmm.
recently, and so earlier in the year.
Right.
And so
Right,
there's
because I know that a lot of people don't realize how old Mobile is, and that one
Yes.
time it was the wealthy families from up in the Northeast would come and spend their winters there in Mobile
Mhm.
because of the weather.
And
So yeah.
arguably, that's where Mardi Gras started.
Yes, it is. People don't realize that. Yes, it did.
Uh-huh.
That's where they had the cruise and where they started. Everybody thinks Mardi Gras is New Orleans, but no,
Oh,
Mobile.
it's big in Mobile.
oh yeah,
Very big.
Yes.
still have big celebrations for it.
It's a big celebration, right? Just like with the parades and stuff like that. Yes, that was a big. And what's really fascinating, I think, and is that most of these crews, it was like a private membership. You didn't know who belonged to them.
Right.
And you always think, why? But yeah, that was the thing, that the membership was, you couldn't just join. You had to be like allowed in, and then whoever were the members, it was like, I was like, yeah, okay. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. But yeah, but they have a lot of old houses out there. A lot of old houses.
Yeah.
Well, as a matter of fact, and real quick, I was doing research on something. There was a family, same thing. They were out of New York, but they had family down in Mobile, very wealthy. As a matter of fact, connected to the Vanderbilts out of Staten Island. She goes on to marry a gentleman that he lived there. Every back then, you had to know somebody to know somebody. Everybody was well connected. She ended up having a kid. Her daughter, in other words, the child of this gentleman from Mobile, very wealthy. She ended up marrying a gentleman by the last name of Maybrick, who back in the 90s, they ended up finding a supposed diary somewhere in the UK. He was out of Liverpool in England, which supposedly he was admitting to being Jack the Ripper.
Oh
It
wow.
was one of those things where, very high profile Northeastern family out of Mobile, Alabama, that had a house on Government Road, I think it is, ends up being connected somehow or other to Jack the Ripper. And I was like, okay, talk about very weird connections. So let me ask you,
Yeah,
what what I'm saying is that sometimes you just, what is it, 7 degrees of separation, but in some
Right,
cases
right.
it's even
Yeah.
less than that. Let me ask you, did you ever, either one of you, have an experience either on an investigation or by yourselves where you knew this? I believe in the paranormal. I believe in ghosts. Like I know that this cannot be explained by my imagination.
Right.
That you had, what do you call it? That coming to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
I think we both have had that.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Well, and one thing, when I was growing up in a haunted house, we experienced things all the time. And a couple of things is when I would witness a full-bodied apparition. And
Okay.
so it's one of those things, like I knew what I saw, but the older I got, you kind of question that. Well, could I really have seen something?
Right.
But now that we're able to go on these investigations and document it with like scientific equipment and like proof that these things exist, and I look
Right.
back at that and like, especially seeing an apparition, that's really kind of what makes you realize that there's something there. And so
Sure.
that's probably one of the biggest moments for me is, seeing something, even though I was a kid then, looking
Okay.
back on it now, still just kind of blows my mind. And,
So you've actually seen something.
Mhm.
Yeah, and not everybody has that experience, by the way.
And
How about
it's really weird because when I was a kid, I saw two full-bodied apparitions. Since I've been adult, I have not seen a full-body apparition.
what did they look like?
So the first one I saw was an old man, and he
Okay.
had white hair, white beard. I could see his clothing, which now I know was kind of like a time period specific clothing. He had like ruffles, white ruffles on his shirt and all around the sleeves, and a tan vest over top of it. And the second one I saw was a little girl who was wearing like a long nightgown. I could see her shoulder length, dark hair, and everything. And so, very clear. Like I could see all of those details. But now that I'm an adult, I haven't seen an apparition like that. And so I'm like, all these locations we go to, why haven't I seen another one?
Yeah, it's
But
just something about being a kid. I don't know.
we did capture a figure on our full spectrum camera
Okay.
that is extremely clear, and so that's the closest I've gotten to see an apparition, but it was through a piece of evidence that we captured. But yeah,
Okay.
when I was little, I guess when you're a kid, you're just
Did you have any idea who the ghosts were? You know, sometimes there's the usual suspects, or you have no idea.
We don't know because we think that it was probably like the land that was attached to
Sure.
the house, because the house was only built in like the 50s or 60s.
Sure.
And so, we had a nickname for him because we didn't
Okay.
know who it was. So growing up, we just called him Chester. And so I've always referred to him as Chester. And
Okay.
but as far as who he actually was,
All
I
right.
don't know, and that's one reason I wish I could get back there and do a formal investigation. And I have tried researching the land, and
Right.
it really doesn't lead me anywhere, just because he looked like he was more from like the 17 and 1800s. So
Right. Exactly.
yeah, almost impossible to go back that far and find something.
And sometimes they didn't record stuff that well. They had, big piece of land, and maybe they had farmers or sharecroppers or just people that were on there that never, or the records were lost. God, that happens. How
Yeah.
about you, Craig? Have you seen?
My biggest thing happened at my first full body apparition was at Sloss Furnace in Birmingham, Alabama,
Okay.
and we had what was his name? He had a show on Travel Channel. Chris, he was a psychic. Anyway, we had him
Chris
with us.
Fleming?
Chris
Yeah.
Fleming, that's it. And he was with us that night, and we were in one of the tunnels, not tunnels, but one of the walkways in Sloss Furnace. And it was raining, so it rained
Okay.
almost all the time. But up maybe about several yards away, a white figure stepped out behind a train car and was watching us, and then would step out, step back, and then step back in. Then you'd see
Okay.
like an arm dangle. He was like almost like playing with us, but solid white, almost like if someone were to put on a body stocking,
Yes.
just solid white. And we sat and watched him probably for about 3-4 minutes. Our
Oh, wow.
cameras could not capture him because of the rain. And
Okay.
as soon as we started taking steps forward, he was gone. But the most significant thing that's happened was at Brushy Mountain State Prison in Tennessee.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
were on an investigation there, and we had probably about 7 or 8. I don't know. Were you there?
I wasn't there on that one. I want to go there.
Yeah, we need to go back. We had probably about 6 or 7 investigators there. So we broke up into, no, we had about 10. So we broke up into 2 groups, and really nothing was happening. And this is like 2 hours into the investigation, and it's just dead silent. Nothing's going on, no feelings, nothing. So we were out in the yard. My group was out in the yard, and the other group was up in the main prison, I believe, in one of the cell blocks. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to mess with this. So I'm a very loud person. I'm a teacher, so I'm a very loud person. So I let out the Bigfoot yell that I could possibly let out.
Oh my God.
Echoed in the mountains and it echoed through the prison. And then we were like, okay, stop. And then, did anybody hear that? They're like, oh, what'd you hear? What'd you hear? So we had a big laugh at it, everything. We said, oh, that
Oh
was
my
me.
God.
So we took a break and we walked back in the prison. Totally different. It's like the air had been sucked out of it.
Okay.
The whole atmosphere was completely different from when we were in there before. And everybody noticed it. It's like it got dark all of a sudden. And I think I really made something mad. And so me and another investigator went to the cafeteria, which is almost pitch black. And we, we were using our video cameras to be able to see where we were going to change some batteries and some equipment. And when I turned around to change some batteries, something jumped. And when I say it felt like someone had stuck 2 electrodes into me and just my whole body was like just on fire. And I'm like tensed up. I'm like, something's on me, something's on me, something's on me, something's on me. And I'm like, get off, get off, get off. And I didn't know what to do. So I just kept going forward. And the second I hit the steps, it was just gone. Like just
wow.
We walked downstairs to our staging area. And one of the investigators came from another part of the prison and came in. As soon as she hit the room, she doubled back and was like, something's on me, something's on me. So it had followed us, jumped onto her. They even got holy water and started sprinkling. She was like, something's on me. She had no idea that had happened to me. And she's like doubled back, like, oh my God. And it's the exact same reaction I had. So I made something mad that night. I've learned not to do that.
I bet.
Stirs things up.
up.
And so he has the best Bigfoot yell.
Let me tell you something. You must have taken years off the lives of that other group.
Yeah.
I swear they must have been like.
Yeah, he did that with it to Sweet Spring Sanitarium.
I remember that.
And that's up in the mountains, just like in West Virginia, and just like it was in the middle of the night, freezing cold, and he lets out that big Bigfoot yell, and it just echoed. I mean, it sounds like a literal monster out there. And so
I can get
it's like nobody's like, do you want to go look? Do you want? No, you see people like they're trying to get a little EVP, like it's whispering, and all of a sudden you hear that and be like, I decided I don't want to be a ghost hunter anymore.
Yeah, I want to go home.
I want to go home now.
We're serious about what we do, but we've got to have fun.
Yeah, you gotta have
fun. Sure, absolutely. Considering the subject matter, yes, you do. You have to have a sense of humor, because if not, you get too caught up in it.
We've actually noticed, to cut you off, we've actually noticed that sometimes when we are having fun,
yes,
and like those times when we're not like actively investigating, but we have all our stuff riddling, that's when we get some of the best evidence.
Yeah. It's if you're laughing and stuff, and we'll just maybe do like a role play session or just something, and just kind of see if we trigger something, and we'll just be laughing. And it had been, it'll be quiet before that, but then stuff starts happening, so it's like it triggers that and it stirs things up. Like
you shift your attention away from like that hearing or seeing. And it's like, okay, I guess they're not paying attention. What are they doing? What are they saying? But let me tell you something. Prisons are something else. I've been to Moundsville, the one in Virginia. Yeah. And of course it's empty like a lot of these prisons. But when you walk in there, it's like, man, you can tell whatever it is. Like you stir it up, but you could tell whatever happened in what's that saying, if walls could talk?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think there's a prison that is not haunted. How's that? Yeah. I think they all are.
I agree with that 100%. And we live in Alabama, which is prison capital of the world, pretty much. So.
Really? I did not know that. It has a lot of prisons out there?
Prisons, yes.
Not a whole lot you can investigate.
Yeah, not many you can investigate.
Is it more so
right. I'm talking about, these old ones that were built like post and pre-Civil War era that were huge, those huge, castle-like things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of jails.
There's a lot of jails.
Right, for the smaller towns, right? I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So have you ever gone to some place? How's this? And because like when you go to one of these prisons or these older places, you're kind of primed, for lack of a better word. Have you ever gone to a place where you didn't expect it?
Oh yeah, many times. Many times. You could talk on that.
Well, honestly, the last place that we went to, it has a long history and everything. I've always heard, it's actually here in Tuscaloosa, heard ghost stories about it, but we weren't expecting it to be super active. But it ended up being a very active investigation. But there's been places that that we've been that it really surprises you.
Yes.
We did a bed and breakfast in Montgomery, and it was a private investigation, so we can't say the name of it.
Sure.
But
I understand.
it was just a comfortable bed and breakfast, and we got like some amazing. None of it was caught on camera because it all happened.
We had one thing on camera.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, we actually. This was kind of towards the beginning of the investigation. Me and one other investigator, we went upstairs, and this is the first time I've ever seen something like this. It was like a mass, like a light. It almost produced its own light, but it was like just a mist, but really thick. And this thing flew above my head, and pitch black, but I could see it. And it wasn't a reflection of a car on the wall or anything. It was like in the air. And I react to it, and we have a DVR system we take with us, and so with IR light and everything. So on the DVR system, you can see it go above my head, and you see me kind of like react to it, like freak out kind of. And so it did that, and we had been there before and investigated this location, and got a few things. It wasn't like crazy active, but this time just kind of seeing something like that you can't explain. That
did it have its own luminescence? Was it casting its own light, in other words?
Yeah, and it was like the other investigator didn't see it. I'm the only one who saw it, but yeah, that's the only way I can describe it. Is it kind of put out its own light, and it was white, but it wasn't bright or anything. But in a pitch room, it was obvious. But yeah, it just kind of flew right over my head. We were hearing some noise in the corner of the room where it came from, so we were looking over there. And then as we were kind of looking, that's when it like flew over my head. But that did pick up on our DVR system. That is a private location, and so unfortunately we haven't had to like share that.
Well, people don't realize, there's people. Everybody thinks that because of the reality shows, all the clients want there's a lot of people out there that do not want.
We do a ton of
anything like that, because they're like, no, I don't want anybody to know about this. I don't want to be on TikTok. I don't want to be in a show. I don't want to be anywhere. Please, confidentiality is really important for them.
Yeah, a lot of people just want answers.
Exactly. Yeah, they just want is it my imagination or what?
Right. We have our show, and the first thing we ask is, do you want anything released? And if they're like no, then we don't.
Yeah, then we just go as investigators and not
so,
document it. But,
exactly.
Well, document for the evidence, but not to share publicly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but with
let me answer the. Go ahead.
I was gonna say with Tuscaloosa Paranormal, we do a ton of private cases. Just people local just calling and saying, "Hey, we need help," and so we do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
We're booked.
No, I bet. Have you ever had the situation where you have to tell them there's nothing here?
Yes.
Oh yeah. It happens a lot.
And people are convinced, by the way, that I'm sure there's a ghost here, especially after reality shows where everything is a ghost, that you kind of have to tell them like, no, it's not,
Yeah. And one thing, you can go to a location and nothing happens, and you can go another time and things happen. So we do tell people, sometimes it takes maybe 2 investigations or more to really get answers. But there are cases that we've gone to, and we've been able to debunk all of the claims, and then sometimes it gives people a peace of mind, and sometimes I think they're hoping for something.
That's what I'm talking about. That they're like. And sometimes it's like, no, you've got a draft because you moved something, or your air vent. Did you something that's really simple?
Yeah.
But everybody's.
Yeah.
You've had that before.
Yeah.
We
people. And they said that they were hearing scratching in the walls. Their pets would react and growl at nothing. And it turns out it was mice in the walls, and a lot of times electrical issues and things like that. And so. Yeah, so we always try to go in and debunk things and help someone explain what they think is activity. Sometimes it has a logical explanation, and so that's what our goal is, to try to rule things out before we go to paranormal conclusions.
Right, right. Which, by the way, I tell everybody because, you know, that sometimes really that is the objective of a paranormal group is to tell you yes if you do have a ghost, but or also to tell you no you don't.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in other words,
Yeah.
yeah, I know it's. I mean, the supernatural is not an on-demand thing. It's not like you said. There's times that you could go there and it's like oh, it's boring, but and but and I tell everybody because I was doing investigations since the 90s, and I said by the time they called somebody to go there, the family on their own had already called the plumber, the electrician, the pesticide, yeah, and by the time they got somebody to go in there, which really paranormal groups weren't really that the 90s, late 90s, they were at their rope's end. They had and 9 times. Now they hear, like you said, scratching behind the wall or something. Everybody runs out and sleeps in the car because it's a ghost for sure. For sure it's a ghost. Whereas before the advent of the reality shows, people this was their last thing that they concluded,
Right.
which is that
They
it's
didn't want it to
haunted.
get out. They're like,
Oh no, they didn't want it to get out, and they were like it was like okay, let's call in everybody, and it was like after everybody cleared the electrician and the plumber and everybody said there's no problem with your plumbing, there's nothing wrong, there's no animal up there, yep, then they would be, and of course there was a lot of other things, but again, getting back to that thing, a good group tells people the good, the bad, and the ugly, which a lot of times the good is like, no, there's nothing here, maybe residual, maybe, but even then it's a lot of times people they're primed and they make things up instead of thinking, oh, it's haunted. By the way, have you ever run into dark cases that you went in there and then all of a sudden when you're investigating it gets a little bit sinister while you're there? Oh, did I lose you guys? If you can hear me, you guys froze on me. Come back. If you can hear me, what I'm going to do is let me see if I can get them. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I lost their camera. Hopefully they will come back very quickly and I will bring them back on. And then we'll find out what they've run into on investigations. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting places out in Alabama. A lot. As far as historical places. But like they were saying, even our house, you could have a house dating back maybe 50s, 60s, whatever, and a house that's relatively modern. And then you get a sighting of what, like, hey, the way you're dressed, I can tell you're not from the 50s. You're older than that. And here they come. They're coming back. Come on. Let me see if I can get them back. They will need to connect. Hold on. Just let's see. Let's give them a minute. But anyway, they you never know what happened on the land. You never know what happened on that piece of land. And people don't realize, because modern times, we are so used to everything being documented. Everybody goes for this or that. Somewhere somebody takes a note, so and so bought his piece of land, somebody so and so sold it, somebody pulled a permit, blah 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 blah. But way back, nobody was doing that. It had to be something really let's see, here we go. Can you guys hear me? Nope. Let's see. Can you guys hear me? Because if you can, nope, they're not. Let's see. Let me see if they come back. At stage. All right, you guys, if you can hear me, I cannot hear you. I can't even see you. Your camera's not even working at all. I don't know if they're having a problem with their connection or it's their internet. But anyway, in the meantime, back at the ranch. Okay, your camera's not there, and you guys are coming in.
We're gonna
like
try
really.
to reconnect.
Go ahead, reconnect. You're gonna leave. You're gonna leave and come back in. Yeah, I think that's what they're gonna do. You know what? I'm gonna do.
Let's see.
Okay, let me know. Don't worry about it. I'm okay. I'm just talking. Let me know when you're ready to come. I can hear you really good now, but your camera's gone. I cannot see you at all. Okay, they left. They'll be back. But anyway, So anyway, getting back to the thing about that, we don't realize that a while back, and then not that, not the 1700s, by the way. As a matter of fact, what was it? I was reading like this was in Florida, but I'm pretty sure that this was across the board, like in Florida. I think it was 1917. People died, and you didn't necessarily need a certificate of death. In other words, people died sometimes. Things happen, and it's not like it is now that somebody makes a record of it. Same thing. People sometimes were on the land. And if you look at historical records, or if you go to the township or the county or whatever was recording land transactions or who lived where, sometimes there's nothing there. All right. Sometimes there's nothing there. Or it was an unofficial, like, hey, can I stay there on that land for a while and not farm it? Okay. We'll work something out. Sometimes you even had small communities, especially if you're talking these big tracts of land where they would just set up a community, even though it was technically owned by somebody, but it was maybe hundreds or thousands of acres, depending. And there was no official record of that small community living there. The houses, the town, the cemetery. And then something would happen and people moved away. Or in one case, I've heard, remember, this was a time where, here we go, they're back. Okay. You were here just, okay. Okay, there you, whoa. Okay, here we go. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, you guys are frozen. I can see you now, but I cannot hear you. And you are not moving. Okay. So anyway, in the meantime, back at the ranch again, a lot of things went on in land, which is why sometimes you see apparitions or ghosts or whatever you want to call them, that by the way their clothing, they predate by a lot. Where, let's say, hey, this subdivision, they made this back in 1960 or 1950 because there was people out there. Or we could go, let's go with the time period where people were immigrating across. Let's say they were going out west. They were in the east, depending, of course, what part of the United States we're talking here. They're going out west and they're traveling, and they would get attacked, maybe by Indians, massacred, or sometimes they would just get sick. And you had people that, en route to where their destination was, maybe out west or whatever. A lot of times out west wasn't that far west. It was just further west of the eastern coast of the United States, which is where all the original major cities were. People just died. They were traveling, covered wagons or groups of people. They died. Same thing. Here we go. Let's see. Cross your fingers, guys. Here we go.
Hey.
Yay. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, don't worry. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. I was talking about, that sometimes when you see stuff on in places where, like what you were describing, Ashley, where you see an apparition that by the way they're clothed, they predate let's say the subdivision. And I was commenting, that happens. A lot of times you have no idea what happened on that land.
And one thing that's also kind of strange, I didn't experience this growing up in that house, but a couple of other people did. But they would hear a gunshot.
There you go.
Immediately after, they would smell, like the room would fill with gunpowder. And so
Wow.
A friend of my mom's that was like a historian, was telling us that during the time period from of the clothing that I described,
Right.
their guns, you'd have to like pack them and the gunpowder
Yes.
and everything. That like modern day guns, when you'd hear, fire a gun, it doesn't fill the room with gunpowder, but back then it would. And so there were several things that kind of tied into like that same time period. And
that's a great tie-in because that smell, because people don't realize, like you were saying, we're used to the bullet being in the chamber, fire it, and there you go.
Yeah.
Man, can you imagine? Talk about, you better learn how to reload really quick.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Craig, you were talking about that I had asked you if you had ever gone into an investigation, either one of you, that maybe you just, let's say the homeowner or whoever it is, they're describing some typical haunted stuff. Like you're like, okay, well, when you go in there, it's like, well, this is a little bit darker than just regular old dead people, or what, what's going on there. Have you guys ever had that experience?
We did. I was
Okay.
not on that investigation, but you were.
Um,
The M House.
I don't think I was there. The rest of our group was. It's
Okay.
rare to actually experience something that's really dark and negative and malevolent or anything. But our group has experienced
Mm-hmm.
a property that definitely was not the norm.
Right.
Okay.
Um, me personally, though, I have been to a location, and it was at a place that I wasn't there to be an investigator or anything. This was just me visiting a place. And walking in, you could feel something dark there.
Okay.
And so it's hard to explain because it's not like, I experienced anything that felt negative, but there was an energy there. But that is rare for us to experience something that's
Right.
really
Just evil. Yeah.
Right.
I think we've experienced more evil former people than like entities, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Or more like negative spirits that are just
Right.
like they're just not happy.
Okay.
And,
Right.
and they make it known that they're not happy.
Okay.
But I've never really experienced anything that I would say is evil. You know what I mean? That just, but like we said, neither one of us were on this particular investigation.
Okay.
I believe we did it twice, but now that family has long gone, and there's no way for us to get back into that.
They moved out?
I don't think that house is even there.
Right, I
anymore.
don't think the house is even
We
there.
actually tried to get in recently to see if we could do a follow-up investigation. That house, I think, was taken away by a tornado or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
But that particular location had a very dark history, and it was a private location, so I can't share too many details, but it had some really bad things happen there.
Okay.
And just from our team experienced some pretty dark activity while they were there.
And that darkness stayed for a long time.
Yeah, sometimes I'm kind of, and
What, you mean after they left?
After they left, it's like
Really?
that depression, was.
And I will say that the location I was talking about earlier that I went and I could kind of feel that just a darker energy. When I left that house, it stuck with me. And sometimes it's rare, but I feel like sometimes that type of energy, it does kind of cling to you a little bit. And so I remember, and I wasn't the only person that experienced this. And when we left, we both just immediately at the same time were like, talking about the way that house felt. And when we left, we were both like, it is still with me. Like that feeling, it just kind of stuck to me. After a little bit, it just kind of faded away. I've only had a couple of times where I felt something either followed me or kind of attached.
Right. Yeah. Like that. And I guess my question was, had you ever gone, to some place and you started and you realized we're out of our depth, as far as a group is like, okay, all right. Have you ever experienced that as far as, or that it's like, oh, we can handle it? As far as if there's a certain level of negativity.
We can handle it. Like I said, I've never really come across anything that's just like overtly evil. That's like, you need to leave. But we have been to a location where this was with Birmingham Paranormal before we merged with Tuscaloosa. We did have one where two investigators quit that night and have never been, and it was just a small trailer. Like a very small trailer, a mother and son, and like off the beaten path. There was like a Civil War graveyard behind it that we investigated as well.
Okay.
But there was a lot of weird things that happened that night to me. So one of the claims that the lady had was that she would hear someone growl in her ear.
Oh, that's wonderful. Growling. That's great.
Well, okay, let's start with as soon as I walked in. As soon as I walked in, that small trailer, and I grew up in, so I know trailers. So I walked in, and it felt like fingers just went down my face. and it wasn't a it
Yippee!
wasn't
I'd be
red,
like, oh,
because I've walked into many spider webs. It
yeah.
literally felt like I could feel the fingers trail down my face.
Okay.
And I was like, what was that? And it didn't register immediately as what that was. It's just, that is
That was just
bizarre.
me. You just
Yeah,
couldn't see it
exactly.
in the
Exactly.
dark.
Yeah.
And then at one point I stepped onto the porch to go get something from one of the trucks. And something did go, "Urgh," like right in my ear, like right in my ear, to where I did a double step and ran to the
Right.
truck. Of
Okay.
course, I came back, but we were in the middle of an EVP session, and one of our investigators, one of the females, was in the back room of the trailer and said that a little girl put her head out of the closet and then went back in, and
That would be
she
pretty scary.
would not do another session. She went out. She stayed outside the rest of the night, and her husband was actually like being our cameraman at that time.
Uh-huh.
And as the night ended, we did we actually did a sensory deprivation experiment.
Okay.
Right? Like slice, ping pong balls on my eyes, and binaural beats in my ears, and
Okay.
laying on the couch. And I
Okay.
was sure that somebody on my team was rubbing their fingers on my legs. It was like
Okay.
just rubbing their fingers on my
That was
legs.
just David.
I know, right? That was just David. But I'm like, y'all stop. Y'all stop. They were like on the other side of the room.
Okay.
And I was like, y'all were not like playing with my legs. And to this day, I've never felt that sensation anywhere else before.
Okay.
At the end of the night, we decided to do that old Civil War cemetery that was behind the house. So we went there and we were just doing an investigation, and the female investigator's husband had the camera, and we're in the middle of doing an EVP session, and he starts packing up. He's like, we're like, what are you doing? He's like, we're gone. No, we're like, what's going on? He's like, we're gone. Something just growled in my ear. You're gone. And of course, we get the audio back, the video back, and you hear right behind his ear, "Brrr." And it was both of them have never been on.
You know what it is? Those are the investigators that ask for the full Monty, and when they get the full Monty, they're like,
Yeah.
I'm out of here. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's over.
They have not been back. We're still friends. We
Yeah. But it's like,
we'll not go on an investigation.
Yeah.
I will say one time I heard something growl, kind of like sound like it was growling next to me. But when I checked my recorder, it was actually an EVP.
Oh,
Okay.
And so to my ears, it sounded like a growl, but on the recorder, it was actually like several words. And so I thought that was neat because I heard it differently than my recorder was able to capture.
Okay.
So I thought
Were you
that
able to make out what the EVP was saying?
Yeah, I can't remember now. I know I have it on my computer, but
But I know it's because some EVPs, you listen to them, you'll have people say, and I listen to it, and it's like, I don't hear,
we
they're
got
unintelligible.
Oh, yeah,
we got a really good one
Okay.
at our last investigation, and it's probably the most clear one I've heard. And
Okay.
I have gone through such an extensive process of trying to debunk it.
We have done everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the only people in the room, like I watched the video and synced it to the audio, and you can tell none of us say anything.
We've
And
also got the DVR footage of it.
and I checked
Two recorders with three recorders, really.
Yeah, and I did like a analysis of it. It's on a different frequency.
analysis.
Yeah, I did it.
Okay.
It's on a frequency, a different tone and pitch, and everything from any of what. Like I compared our voices to this, and so it's actually going to be on our upcoming episode. And so it is just.
Okay.
It's I think the best EVP I've ever heard.
Yeah,
Like I'm
it's
really
good.
excited
Okay.
about
It's really
it.
good. It took both of us by surprise.
Yeah.
No, let me tell you something. Sometimes it's really difficult, and it's not that the EVP is not valid. It's just that for some reason some things are really clear, or like you said, that one that's gravelly. It's whatever it is. You just God, it could be this, it could be that. It's like, let me ask you, when in that trailer, that investigation, what you guys experienced, did it correspond with what the people that were there were describing?
Yeah, the woman said that her son just keeps seeing kids, seeing
Okay.
people, and they were just scared.
Okay.
And they were very honest. They were very they didn't have a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so they could readily move.
Yeah,
So our job
exactly.
was to like say, yeah, you got some stuff happening, but nothing was negative. Nothing,
Right.
like seemed hard. They were more to us. It was more curious.
Okay.
To a couple of the investigators, it may have been a little more serious, but to us, it's like they're curious. I think
Let
they
me
all.
ask you, how far away was that Civil War cemetery from there?
Uh, I would say just maybe a 30 to 35-second walk. It was very close.
That's
It was
nothing.
not far at all.
That's nothing.
And it had like an iron gate around it, or like an
Mm-hmm.
iron fence around it to keep. It was a
Yeah.
historic society, and yeah, it was only like a 30-second walk from there, so it wasn't far at all. It
Okay.
was close to a freeway, so when he heard that, we were like, "Dude, it's just the Jake brakes on it's just trucks," And then we
Right.
got,
Right.
or I say the EVP, but we got the audio bags like, "Oh, that was definitely," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly what it, on my
Exactly.
mind at the same time."
Exactly. Yeah,
Now,
that growling will
we
do
had,
it to you. A growl
uh,
will do that to you.
oh yeah, yeah,
That'll put the fear of God
that
in
was
you.
that was creepy. That was very creepy. Now we have also had EVPs that changed.
Oh yeah, and that's
This is
really weird.
the only one time, but this is a really weird thing that happened at Old South
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
no, Old Harriman
Pyramid
Hospital,
Hospital. Yeah.
and yeah, we never had anything happen like this before, but we caught an EVP really clear
Mhm.
on the recorder. We
Okay.
listened back to it then when we let some other people listen to it, then we just like a short time after that, we listened to it again. The voice had changed, like it was completely different. But
Really?
I had a different device that also picked up the EVP, but it was saying something different
Mhm.
on one device. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Like I even reached out to Grant Wilson because he's the only person that I've ever seen talk about an EVP changing like that.
Okay.
And so he kind of, explains some stuff, and it's really, really weird. I've never had an EVP change like that. And then
Really? I know that's
Yeah.
very
when I put it on
interesting.
the computer, it was
Saying
saying
something
something
different.
different. I was like, what is going on here? But I still don't know. I can't explain that.
Was could you were you able to make out what it was saying, what the EVP was, what it was saying?
Yeah. So on one of my recorders, it's saying right here.
Okay.
And then on my other recorder, it actually sounds like it says behind you.
That's totally different.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, and I can sync them up, and you hear me kind of like what follows, the EVP follows. And so, same exact moment. Yeah, one says behind you, one says right here, and then it changed to right there. And it just, and the tone of the voice. One of them
It's
it sounded
different.
like whispering,
Right.
and then the other one it was a lot more loud. It was just, I'm like, how is that happening? How? And one thing
Right.
that he told me is, that he's only experienced it with like an analog recorder.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
sometimes weather or heat can kind of distort it a little bit, but this was
Yes.
digital. And so there
Okay.
was no one who could explain how it changed the tone, the pitch, and also the words.
Right.
There was no way we could explain that. That still
Unless you had a double EVP going on at the same time and one piece of equipment picked
Yeah.
up something
It wasn't
and the
all
other one
about-
picked it up.
Mhm.
Because it sounded like what you're saying was it was an intelligent response, or was it? How's this? Did somebody have a question that was the appropriate answer, or
Well,
did you just pick it up?
Yeah, Craig was actually downstairs. I was with another investigator upstairs. At the
Uh-huh.
same time, we were both hearing a female disembodied voice. So we were hearing things, and then a door slams. So I stand up and I start talking to the other investigator, Heather, and I'm like, should I check to see if that was them?
Right,
That
right.
it started. That's when the EVPs picked up, and so it was like it was trying to say right here, And
Okay.
so it was.
All
I
right.
feel like that was an intelligent response, even though it wasn't answering a question. It was
Mhm.
trying to let me know, hey, I'm here.
Right. Okay, I see. I see the scenario now. Why?
Mhm.
And I guess My question was because sometimes you have these EVPs and you almost think it's not intelligent. It's not. It's just something you pick up, and then you have the EVPs, which they're in response to what either the situation or a question that somebody said, or even the conversation, like you said, that people are talking, and they put their 2 cents worth in, and you're like, hey, you don't hear it obviously, but then later on you realize they're commenting about what the conversation is.
I have a great one for you.
Go ahead.
I have such a good one for you. It's been torn down now, but it's an old mental hospital in Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
And we investigated there. This was when we first started. And it was actually the first thing that Birmingham Paranormal and Tuscaloosa Paranormal had gotten together years and years ago. And the place was called Bryce. And it was the old Bryce. So it was the mental asylum and also a retirement or like a nursing home that was connected to it. So we were there, and we had two instances that are just insane. Number one, we were up on the third floor, and this building is falling down. So it is in ruins. It's very dangerous, which is why people don't go. And we did have permission from the police to go.
Okay.
So we did have permission. We never go. We never break into any place.
Sure. No, that's a bad idea.
So we did have police permission to be there that night. So we were up on the third floor, and the ductwork had fallen down. And we had about 10 people along with a reporter from Tuscaloosa who went along with us, and we were going to do an EVP session. So everyone said, hey, well, we're going to sit on this ductwork. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So I lean up against the wall. And we start the EVP session. Everyone says their name. And we start the session, and then all of a sudden the ductwork gives out, and everybody falls on the ground, and everybody's laughing and all this. And so I get my reporter back, and you hear me say, like, I'm going to stand here, and then everybody starts the EVP session. And then a voice, like up here, like up on the ceiling, goes, "It ain't gonna hold y'all." And then everybody falls.
Oh my God.
And it's as clear as it can be, and I'm trying to find it. I actually today have a reader for some old hard drives that I can plug in and start getting some. And I've got to find it, but it's an old Southern.
Yeah.
That's the perfect Alabama.
It's insane. And
yes.
Everybody falls down, and everyone's laughing. Earlier in the night, we had a group that was, including the reporter, that was at the nursing home area. And something kept like throwing like little bitty pebbles like at us. And it's not like they would fall here. They would like hit us out of the head. We're like, what's going on here? And so we all stand up against a wall. And before we start any EP session, everyone says their name. So if we go down the row, and then the reporter says her name, and as soon, without skipping a beat, a voice of the same level as us that we did not hear goes, Horace. So it's
of all the names, that's an old-fashioned name, let me tell you.
The Craig, Laura, Micah, Hannah, Horace, and no idea who Horace is. And
I love it.
Trying to find these. I've got to find these because we've got to put them on our podcast as well. Because I've got to find those, and I'm hoping they're on one of these hard drives I'm going to look through tomorrow.
Yes, God, that's excellent, because that's what I'm talking about. That they're hanging out, like, okay, let me I'll call out my name. Why not?
Yeah.
You know what? And the thing is that in these asylums, there's people that basically would live out their lives.
Exactly.
This was home to them. All right, this was home. Yep. And I tell everybody, because you always hear about these asylums, about they were taking people and doing these experiments, and you were being held. And in truth, what would happen is, and you really, you had the people that were really violently mentally ill, like. Yeah. Then you had other people who were just peculiar, eccentric. They had stuff. Some had been kicked in the head by a mule, stuff like that. But what would happen is that because these places were always understaffed and too many people. So when they would contact the family, if they could, guess what? They ended up living there because the families would never come for them. That's what people don't realize. Everybody thinks that these asylums were they were holding people against their will. And that's not the case. Most of the time they had so many people. They wanted to be like, because a lot of times the families would move away and not tell the staff, and even if the family was still at a certain address, not all the time, but a good portion of the time, the family was not interested
Yeah.
in coming to get them.
Yeah.
You know, so they would end up living their lives at these asylums, which is why a lot of these, the haunting is, I want to say, not because they had a traumatic death or anything. It's just that they actually lived their, just about their entire lives there.
Yeah.
They did.
And I will say Bryce did have
Yeah.
a dark history. People were mistreated. There's
Oh yeah, no. That's, you know what? It's inevitable because, like I said, they would be so understaffed, and let's face it, the quality of the employees were not exactly the best, if you know what I mean. So that goes without saying. But yeah, a lot of times people, like, in other words, the families didn't want to go through the trouble
yeah.
of picking up their family members. So, and they would get, that would happen. But I think that's great that Horace, that's such an old-fashioned name that it kind of like stands out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is, what a great story that is. But it is like Horace, like I've been to the Talladega, the Asylum Tala. I've been there. And they've restored a lot of it, and it's really funny because, when you go into that main entrance where there was just like a sitting room or what they call a parlor where there's no bars on the window. It's because they didn't want people to start thinking of, you're dropping off your family member where they're going to be in prison, but then the rest of the place, of course, is barred up. It's full of bars. But yeah, it's that's another place that it's inevitable you're going to have some type of activity there, just because so much happened there. What right now would you say, of all the places that you've been to, would be the most interesting or the best investigation that you've done location wise?
I think we got the same answer.
Oh no, what's yours?
Old South.
Yeah, I mean, Old South Pittsburgh Hospital is one of our favorites.
Okay.
I think Old Harriman competes with that, if not even above it, but we've only gotten to go there once.
Yeah, we definitely need to go back.
Honestly, the most recent location that we went to that's here in Tuscaloosa, it's called the Gorgas House. I want to go back there.
Yes.
That's one that surprised me of how much activity we got. But
Okay.
and there's another house here in Tuscaloosa called the Drish House, and it's one of my favorites because I always get activity when I go.
Okay.
But as far as creepy level, one of the hospitals, Old South Pittsburgh Hospital.
Yeah, the hospitals will do it. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff at hospitals.
The weird thing about Old South Pittsburgh is I've had dreams of that hospital. I never dream about places we investigate. I've had dreams about that hospital, and when I walk in, it could be a year that I haven't been there.
Okay.
And I walk in and I absolutely feel like I'm at home. It's like I know it's the corner. It's like I almost walk in and it's like, hey guys, I'm home. It's the weirdest feeling that I've never.
How old is that? How old is that hospital? When does it date back to?
Let's see. It closed, I think, probably in the 1980s.
All right.
Yeah. We have the whole history written up on it. I just can't remember off the top of my head, but like maybe in the 50s or so when it was established. But before that, the land itself has a lot of history as well.
Okay.
But Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, that's one that location does something to me too.
Yeah.
It gives me dreams. Like, it's weird because leading up to the investigation,
I
get those
remember
weird
that.
dreams.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. Yeah.
And I dreamed about something and then ended up having that kind of a similar experience while I was there. But that location, the times I've been, I also have something that follows me to like the hotel, because we always stay at a hotel when we go. And I think it was Heather, one of our other investigators, Tuscaloosa Paranormal. She said the same thing. It was like something was in her room. So it's like after that first night, something always kind of follows you. It goes right back. But that location always, the fact that it's even in my dreams, and I even leaving there, I have these crazy dreams.
Same. And
that's so interesting.
And this is the only place that's ever done that.
And I've heard other people talking about that too.
That they had a similar experience.
Yeah. And I don't have dreams about other places, but Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, for some reason, I keep feeling called back to it.
Yes. Is it a big? I mean, I've heard of of that hospital, but is it large? Is it a large area as far as?
Yeah, it's pretty large. And I can't remember the square footage, but I have that written down
Right.
somewhere. But it's a large location.
Yeah. And
No, the reason I asked you is that,
Yeah.
once upon a time, the older buildings, they would have staff that would live, like they would have buildings for the nurses, which
Yeah.
I'm sure they had their own drama going on. So, but I usually that was the older stuff, pre 1950s, where they would just have, or if there were TB hospitals, they would have buildings for the staff.
right.
And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff went on with the staff. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. What were you gonna say, Craig?
Oh, just the fact that it just falls almost like wanting you to come back.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
we've been places where they may not want you to come. They're like, come on back, we want you.
Yeah.
Okay.
A weird draw to it. And, we've been a few times where no activity happened.
Right.
And
Your
so-
Yes.
Yeah, my first
Nothing.
time, nothing happened.
Yeah.
But the second time, a lot happened. We went earlier this year. Really, not a whole lot happened. And so
Okay.
it's just one of those locations that's like there's something about it, but it's not like always active. Weird.
Right. Let me ask you, considering it sounds like you've been there, is it a time of year or something, weather that's conducive to it, or nothing that you've seen a pattern to it?
Well, we've been there in the winter. We've been in summer, spring. We've
Okay.
been there about like 7 times, I believe.
All right.
Yeah, and I've heard that it's more active in the spring there, but
Okay.
we've been in the spring.
Yeah.
We went this past spring and nothing happened.
Okay.
When we went, I think in the fall is when when I experienced most
Right.
activity there is when I've been in the fall.
Okay.
So, but I would not suggest going in the summer because it is so hot.
Right.
It's
There's
so-
what? No air conditioning, nothing,
Yeah.
right? Wow. Yeah, I can get that. That's so. What are you guys planning? Do you have any investigations
Mhm.
that you're planning on going on?
We have Lynchburg.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's going to be a 2-night investigation. We're actually going to film at that one, and
Okay.
that's next month, I believe.
Okay.
We have a couple of events and stuff, and one thing with the Gorgas house that we just filmed at this past weekend, we're actually in the talks of doing like some ghost tours there this
Okay.
fall. And so we have a few things like that, and always we have private locations that pop up randomly
Sure.
throughout the year, and so. But Lynchburg is probably, I think, our next investigation.
Right.
And
Because people don't realize Halloween, the fall is right down the road. People don't
Oh, yeah.
realize.
Exactly.
It's right there.
Yeah, we love Halloween.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That me too. But yeah, I was born in October, but still, I like Halloween. The weather's cooler, but you
Yeah.
get a lot of the tours and things like that, and you're able to go to some neat places. And I think the best thing is the people that really know the real history, not the one that's out there. Like you're gonna give me the real skinny on it, right? Like what was really happening here. Like the human, how's that? The human factor,
right.
besides just the haunted stuff or the, hey, we saw this ghost. It's like, what was going on? That, the drama, how's, for
Right.
lack of a better word. Because I think that's what happens. And I'm sure you guys have come across this where you go into these buildings, especially if they've been around for a while, and there's like something like in the fabric of the place, the living, that it's not a haunting per se, but there's a flavor to what was going on there, one way or the other. Either good, bad, or like you said, dark, or welcoming in some cases. And then there's something there that that happens where you go to these places that have been around for a while. Just the living, I guess, when you have the living there a long time,
Right.
you find that. It has been great. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I think even sometimes like the living, the energy you put out, like
Yes.
it's like the stone tape theory, that
Yes.
energy absorbs into, the walls, the
Yes.
ground, the stone, and so there's a lot of places you can go, and it's maybe not necessarily like you're gonna experience like ghost activity,
Yes.
but that energy is there. You can feel that it's very residual.
Yes. And yeah, I tell everybody, there's places that you go to. I've even told people, that have gotten houses you might see it, it's all pretty and painted. And if, for example, I'm going to use the example, if it was ever used as a sick room for a length of time, I'm not talking about, and I'm not talking a hospital setting, I'm talking like even a private home or something. You'll have people that will at some point, especially if they live there, at some point even feel some of the symptoms of whoever was there for an extended period of time. And
Right.
it's not that there's a ghost there. It's just that, like you said, the stone tape theory, it becomes impregnated, and who's ever there, even if they're not per se empathic, they still start sometimes picking up on symptoms or dreams. They'll have certain dreams that they'll be like, this is not my people, or not my, where's this coming from?
Hmm.
That's very common. People don't realize that does happen. Just like people don't realize that in some states now, that they've passed laws for stigmatized real estate, in case there's ever been like a shooting or a murder, or something. uh and in some states, not all, I don't know in particular, but some of them, even if it gets a reputation for being haunted, they have to disclose this to potential buyers, just in case.
I don't think so, because yeah, there was actually some things that happened on the current property that I live on that were not disclosed until after we bought the
Right.
house. And found
Well,
out.
in some, it's like really weird. It's like they only have to disclose it if you ask. But if you don't know to ask,
Yeah.
they're not obligated to disclose it. Every state's got their own real estate laws about that. Because and then you go to one time I was reading an article and I was laughing because it was like, oh, you want to pick up real estate cheap? Go after the supposedly stigmatized properties, because
Mhm.
people wig out. Even the skeptics are like, nah, I'll pass on that one. That kind of deal. It's just in case, there's something still hanging out. Again,
Yes.
guys, for my podcast listeners, what is the website they can find you guys at?
We are at crashmediaparanormal.com.
Okay.
And on YouTube, well, we're Crash Media Paranormal on all platforms.
Mhm.
Our
Okay.
channel is on YouTube. Our channel,
Okay.
and we also have a channel on TikTok. But our new website, you can go and click on each episode. Also,
Okay.
click on each of our podcast episodes.
Let me ask you something. Do you have the podcast, and what on YouTube? What do you have? Do you have the places where you go to investigate, or are they interviews? What do you have on?
We have basically three things that we work.
Okay.
We have our series episodes, which
Okay.
like Old Harriman Hospital, Old South
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh Hospital. That's our
Okay.
full, investigation edited, basically TV show.
Okay.
And we have our podcast that we do just for fun,
Okay.
and we also recap some of the episodes and
Mm-hmm.
talk about things, talk about old movies, things that we're interested in. And
Okay.
then we produce something called 1 Minute Ghost Stories, and that's mainly for our TikTok channel and things
Like
like
the
that.
shorts
Yeah,
and
like
everything.
shorts.
Yeah.
And
We have
so,
a few live streamed
yeah,
ghost stories on there as well.
right.
But if you go to our channel, Conversations with Crash is our podcast, and then
Okay.
just the ones that say like episode 1, Moody Mansion, like that's our
Okay.
series that we do, and that's the one that features our investigations with like the evidence presented and everything.
Before I forget, what do you guys think? What I was talking about at the beginning with AI robotics, and then becomes sentient and having a soul, and then before you know it, you're being haunted by a robot. I'm just being.
I am
But
one.
you know that we're going down that road.
Exactly. I am 125% science fiction fan. I love
Hmm.
science fiction. So I cannot wait to have a little robot run around my house. I
Okay.
absolutely cannot wait. If he turns evil, I'm just going to punt kick him out of the house. But I'm not scared of AI.
Okay.
It can be a little uncanny valley, but
Okay.
you know, that's not something that has, I'm more excited about it than anything else. I want a robot
Right.
that I can just pal around with. I want
Right.
C3PO walking through my house. That's what I want. So,
See, I feel
But well, go ahead. Go ahead. See, keep going.
I've seen enough movies. I'm like, we've been warned, and I don't know if but as far as like AI advancing to the point of becoming sentient, AI is progressing so
Right.
fast. I see how it could, and even with Chat GPT, you can have a whole
Exactly.
and ask if it even is even aware of it being AI, and it's like it starts like diving deep within its own existence.
Right,
And
self-aware, almost you want to say, for lack of a better word.
yeah,
It's not just computer, information that's, fed in there and just ask me a question. It's like, what was it that, like a couple of weeks ago, they said that they did it on purpose just to test it, but basically it was
Oh
going
yeah.
to blackmail one of the people that was running it because he had put information that he was having some type of extramarital affair. And they kind of were talking, I guess, feeding information that they were going to turn it off, and it kind of was trying to blackmail him, like, hey, I'll let them know that you have been doing that. And I was like, that's really like, that's a little bit okay.
it's like they can create their own code now to override shutdowns. And
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
one thing I think about is spirits can manipulate like the equipment that we use. They can like the energy and communicate through wireless devices and things like that. Who's to say a spirit can't use AI and figure out a way to manipulate that?
So my
You know?
C-3PO is going to be haunted.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Last week I was talking to my guest and we were talking about the same thing. And he goes, well, you know that spirits attach themselves to dolls. Why can't they take over a robot? It's like, oh God,
Yeah.
that'll be like, you're here hitting the off button and it's not working, that
Yeah.
kind of deal. Or you know how people now even get wigged out because they think their smart devices are listening to them. Here's your robot standing in the corner looking at you and you're like, what? Because that's the thing about us humans. It's like, it's great when I have a lot of heavy lifting to do, but you're wigging me out there. Yeah.
I believe Alexa will be AI
Yes.
in October. So the
Really?
version of Alexa is going to be upgraded, and I think all of them will be upgraded to AI, so you can have full-on conversations.
Eventually, our human brains are going to be integrated with AI, and
Well, and they're also
I don't know if
so
I like
useful.
it.
Right, okay, I speak Spanish, English, Norwegian, and I'm learning French. So me and ChatGPT, I'll just say, kan vi snakke på norsk? And,
Right.
and we'll have Norwegian conversation or vamos a hablar español. So
Right.
it's great. Yeah, it could be great tools for language learners and everything
Sure.
else. So it's great practice, and that just adaptability to it.
Yeah. I get it.
Don't get me wrong, as far as information, accessing information, list just information that once upon a time, before, let's say, the internet, you had to go to a library and bury yourself there for 2 months to get what you can get
Remember
in
the
two,
days.
2 minutes. Yeah, exactly. And that part, believe me, I'm pro, and and the even with a phone.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
I remember I was alive when there was not, but I can't help also, that it stifles maybe creativity. How's that?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the part I think that there's some certain things that we got to be cautious about.
Yeah.
As far as what it does for humans, and then
Right.
like I said, we'll go down the rabbit hole down that as they make them more human looking, so that we don't that we kind of forget that they're robots.
Right.
Do we end up, oh, my old robot Toby went, I had to scrap him, but now I keep seeing Toby walking around my house. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
why not? All right, guys, thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you guys. I want to wish you the best of luck.
Oh,
Well,
thank you.
thank
Yeah,
you.
we've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Likewise, take care.
All right,
You
you
too.
too. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Let me tell you something. You guys might think, man, that's really far-fetched, Marlene. No, it's not far-fetched. It's not far-fetched. Hold on, let me turn on the fan. Because it's gotten a little bit hot in here. I have a little fan over here. But yeah, it's coming down the pike and fast. It's like coming down the pike of, how's this? It's coming down the pike hard, fast. It's picking up speed as it goes along. And you know what? And I guess the reason why I'm saying this is that I've been alive long enough where robots or stories about robots or robots this or robot that was strictly sci-fi. Sci-fi or, like I said, Blade Runner when it came out, the original Blade Runner, the original Terminator. It was like, wait, oh, remember, these movies came out pre-internet. But even then, you always thought, yeah, there's going to be robots, and the computers were like in a room. And of course, as it's gone by, it's just picked up speed. But when I read that article that that I read that from that Chinese inventor, like whatever, it's going to be there. Now, the question is, obviously, at some point you think, okay, this robot can be smarter than me. Can it overpower you? Why not? Let's go down that road. Is it going to be something that's great? Because think about it. If it's strong enough to do certain household activities, and this is just me, maybe not. Will it be strong enough that if you wanted to overpower it because it went berserko? And please don't tell me it can't, because I saw that video that came out like about a month ago. Anything mechanical can go berserko. It can have a short circuit. Something goes wrong. You get, I don't know, the circuit, there's humidity in it, whatever. But it happens. Nothing's perfect. Can you overpower it? Can you, knock its head off? Or is this thing gonna stomp on you, and the next thing you and your family make the headlines? That kind of deal. That's something. So people think, oh wow, you're way out there, Marlene. Yes, this is stuff that we have to think about. Because the truth is, I really don't know initially. I'm thinking that a lot of these robots, if you see where this is going, because if that article, basically it's talking about how this robot can cook for you. So you know that where we're heading with this is household duties. They're heading as in everybody has a robot. Okay, this is not like, so if everybody, are we going to have it, or is it only deep pockets? But the feeling, I guess, that eventually they're going to make it. You know how well, no, a lot of people don't, but once upon a time, to have a phone, they had to do a credit check on you, and it was expensive. And sometimes you would get phone bills that be like, oh my God. All right, then little by little by little, it just became more accessible. Who's going to phone it? It's like you could walk in there now and just get a phone and get it. But what I'm saying is that you see where eventually, even though you might need a lot of money to get the first models, as time goes by, they'll become more affordable. And who would not want one? Especially if you're older or you're impaired, or just, hey, if it's going to do all the hard work and nobody wants to do the housework or whatever, you could see where it will sneak in to just about every household. The flip side of it is, what is the real price that we would pay for that? Would it be listening to everything? Plus, remember, the we'll call it the eyes, are really cameras, basically spying on you. And I know I'm not being paranoid. I'm talking about, if anybody, same way with a Bluetooth, they can be, even now what they do now, that they're listening or seeing what you're seeing. Just like they do, like they scrape all this information off the internet, or what you're doing or what you're seeing, or they even say the phones, whatever. That basically now you have something in the house, which is, even if you, how's this? Even if you pull a switch that says, no, this thing cannot transmit any information out, that doesn't mean it can't, that there's no hidden device. So I'm saying we have to, I think we have to think good and hard. What outweighs what? The benefits versus the risks. And yes, I think some risks are going to be obvious. Like I said, something that goes berserko, and then you're like, I'm trapped in my house with a berserk robot. And then there's the hidden risks, which are, I have something in my house that's recording every little thing that's going on in my house. The conversations, what's going on, who's running around, who's doing this, who's coming there, who's coming to visit my house, what we're cooking for dinner, blah, 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 blah. And then we'll go to the inevitable, which is basically, and by this is before me going into sentience, okay? Because there's people that say, yeah, robotics can do this, but they're never going to become sentient. Okay, I'm talking about, we're not even talking there. you're going to have basically something that's recording everything that's going on in your house. Whatever, good, bad, ugly, a fight, an argument, intimate stuff, uh, what we're watching, whatever we're having for dinner. Just remember, at the end of the day, a lot of times it's just, let's face it, not everybody, most people live kind of like normie, like boring lives. When I mean boring in the context of, but just for the same reasons that they scrape information about us now to find out what are people watching, what are people eating, what are they doing, what are their expectations, what are their conversations, what about politics, what do they think, or what, that deal. Hey, are they going to be moving? Yeah, man, we need to hit them up with some real estate ads, all that stuff. Okay. But again, it comes to what's it going to do for the down the road. Again, is what it does to our creativity. What does it do to our spontaneity? What does it do to, some people say, well, you know what? If I had a robot that did all my housework, then I could go out and jog, or I could go to the gym, or I could do this stuff that now I don't have the time for. Okay. But really, you think that? Again, we have to be, that's a very slippery, or like even now, hey, I don't need to know how to do multiplication. I don't need to memorize multiplication tables or know how to do long division because I got a calculator. Or even back then, I've got a robot that I can say, hey, whatever the name of the robot, because they're all gonna get names, by the way. You know that, right? I don't care if it's the DS200. Once upon a time, back in the 1980s, there was such a thing called the Cabbage Patch Kids, which were the ugliest dolls, but they became the rage. Why? Because each doll, okay, was supposed to be individualized, came with a birth certificate with its own name. It was individualized. So you better believe, take it to the bank, that these robots, by the time they hit the normies' houses, they're going to be given some type of name, or you'll register the name for your robot or something to give it its identity. All right. What's it going to do to our ability to think our ways out of problems or find solutions if Toby over there in the corner, all you have to go is, Toby, blah, blah, ask him a question. You don't think that's going to be a downside to that? We're going to be a bunch of like, let me use one of my $10 words, ignoramus. We're going to be like, not, because let's face it, this is, even now, I'll give you, for instance, Audible is a big deal. You listen to the stories. I myself have done it, not all the time, but sometimes. But I'll tell you what, when you actually read, and I've been a reader all my life, this is how you learn punctuation, grammar, sentence structure. Especially if, hopefully that you're reading half decent material as far as the quality of the writing. This you learn, you expand by actual reading, not listening to it, is my point. Yeah, it's great, but when you read it is when you develop your comprehension skills and your vocabulary and all that boring stuff, grammar. So what do you think is going to happen when you've got a machine that does not only the heavy lifting, it does the heavy lifting for you mentally? All right. I know there's a bunch of people running around. You take a calculator away from them and you give them a long division problem or fractions or, God forbid, algebra, basic algebra, and they'll be like, then what? And I don't know if it was like, and again, don't get me wrong. The idea for me is great because I could see the advantages of it, but I still see the how's this? I see where some people will realize, yeah, I have maybe this robot that is like a tool. How's that? It's a tool and it'll make my life easier. I can even say, even for older people, they'll have somebody that will do stuff that maybe they physically couldn't do. And I'm sure there's going to be some type of thing, health, where they could, like put here and they'll be able to get, your blood pressure, your sugar or whatever. Like old people edition of the robot. Anyway, Uh, yeah, there will be people that will realize this is useful, but I know that I can't depend on it 100%. There's other things that I need to know how to do by myself. If that robot wasn't here, and then there's a good portion of us, especially the more that they'll just be like, "This is great." They become dependent. How's this on robotics? They become totally dependent on robotics. Okay, and let me give you, for instance, everybody now knows that, let's say farming, big agriculture, they've got these tractors and everything is on a system, as far as whether it's seeding and fertilizer and, they've got those huge sprinklers and a lot of times you realize, okay, they're doing this because there's such a vast amount of land that has to be cultivated that this is better than a plow and a horse. My question is, which by the way, I believe there's a shortage of farmers, or the average age of a farmer is like 60, something like that. Would any of these farmers, if they had to, and they said, we're taking away your tractor and we're taking away your sprinkler system and we're taking away all these gadgets that you do, would you still be able to cultivate? Not the whole, obviously not the, but would you be able to farm it on a couple of acres, 3 acres? Would you be able to grow it? Do you know what to do? That would be the question. If we took this robot out of there, because the reason down the pike that I'm getting to, even though, which by the way, to me is the dystopian, that we become so dependent on having this robot in our household, or maybe even at stores or wherever they're at, because they're going to be taking, it's going to be just not the house. Are we going to become so dependent on whatever it does for us that we will put up with things that we shouldn't have, or we shouldn't, because we're so lazy or scared, or fill in the blank? What do you think? What do you think is going to come down the road with the robotics and the AI? And I'm not even going down the road of sentience and does it have a soul? Will it get a soul? Then afterwards, will it haunt you? I'm not even going there. That's like, where you never know, but I'm not even there yet. Forget it. What do you think? What do you think is going to be what our lives are going to be like? Which I'm telling you again, at the rate this is going, within less than 10 years, we'll be there. Within less than 10 years, we will be there. All right. As far as what are the trade-offs, for having that help. How's that? For having the convenience. There's always a trade-off. There's always a quid pro quo, Clarice. Yeah, we'll give you this handy dandy helpful robot that will, even tell you what time it is. But in exchange for what? That's the question. What is the what? So again, guys, I hope you like this show. Please check out Craig and Ashley's channel, Crash Paranormal. I will put a link in the credits of the show. Sign up for my Substack newsletter, mpellicer.com. Wherever you find us, whether it's YouTube, wherever, please subscribe so that you can get notified. Again, I'm on all the major podcast platforms, also the video platforms. And don't forget, I also have nightshadediary.com and supernaturalstorytime.com. And then I write eerie news. And again, if you go to the stuff that I have on Substack, I just have it on Substack. I don't duplicate it. Okay. But of course, go to miamighostchronicles.com or mpellicer.com, either one, and you're going to find links to everything everywhere, whether it's the videos, the podcasts, articles, you name it. All right. And soon, as a matter of fact, got a lot of great guests already lined up. And I'm already, believe it or not, working on my guest list for season 18 of Stories of the Supernatural, which is going to cover from January to June of 2026. Okay, that's already where we're going with this. Okay, and again, I'm always looking for new guests. And by this, what I'm saying is, you do not have to be an expert or an author. If you've got stories, if you're a local paranormal investigator, contact me, and I'll set up an interview with you. again, you don't have to be like somebody that's like, oh, I've written this book and everybody knows my name. Some of the best stories you get are from the people, what I call the real ones that, or maybe you're just a person that's got great stories. Maybe you grew up in a haunted house, or maybe you just had great stories because you're a psychic and everywhere you go, I don't know, you trip over a ghost, or you've had weird experiences. Whatever. Contact me, Marlene at MiamiGhostChronicles.com, and we'll set up a way of doing the interview. If you're shy about being on the camera, or you're shy about your identity, we could just do an audio version of it and we'll just give you a different name, whatever you would like. If you don't want anybody to know who you are, that's fine. I can do that. And believe me, I know how to keep my mouth shut. You don't ever have to worry about me disclosing anything. What they were saying about that they have private residential investigations. Yeah, I understand what that's about. So again, guys, thank you so very, very much for coming back every week, spending this time with me. You're all wonderful, and don't forget to come back next week. Till next time, take care.